Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John. As always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic. Let's do it. People who have been in a home invasion. What was it like? And what did you do? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Dude came knocking on the front door, and my mom and I ignored it. I was about 10, and my mom didn't want to answer the door to a stranger. He knocked a while, then went around the back and hopped the gate to try the back door. My mom got her gun and opened the back door with it visible, right before he tried to smash the glass. He took off running and was arrested on B&E charges the next day after he broke into someone else's apartment and couldn't run. I was at my friend's place when it happened to him. We were both teenagers then. The guy thought everyone was sleeping, and he got startled when he saw us. He bit my friend. His arm required stitches from the bite and ran away. No idea who the guy was or what he wanted. Never happened again, and we never saw the guy again. 4 guys knocked on my buddy's door at 11 p.m. He lived with a bunch of other guys, so this wasn't anything new. They burst in and held a gun to his neck and demanded the drugs. He stammered that there weren't any drugs, but they could take what they wanted. One guy held him there with the gun as the other searched the house. Since they didn't find anything, they realized that they had the wrong house and left. As they were leaving, the last guy said, "Sorry, this wasn't my idea." My in-laws were home when a young guy broke into their house. They don't speak English very well, so my father-in-law, in the clearest English he could muster, loudly said, "Get me my gun." At that point, the intruder left in a hurry. I was in college and had the only room on the ground floor. I was bartending, so I got home at like 3:30 a.m. I had just changed and gotten into bed when I heard someone fiddling with my window screen. Lived in a beach town, and I usually left my windows cracked open to hear the ocean as I fell asleep. I first thought it was one of my roommates who forgot their keys or something, but realized they would have called me first. So I flattened myself against the foot of my bed and the wall to look. It was a dude in a black hoodie with a box cutter cutting my window screen. As he was lifting himself to enter, I jumped up onto my bed and kicked him as hard as I could on the chest. He fell into the parking lot, hit a bike rack, and was knocked unconscious. I slammed my window shut, bolted it, and called the cops. By the time they showed, he was gone, but they found him 2 blocks away. His bag had zip ties and duct tape in it, and he had a record of SA. The cops blamed me a bit for having my windows open. I keep my windows shut after that. They blamed you for having your window open? That's ridiculous. You have a window. You should be able to open it. Maybe they should make the streets safer. Tackled a guy. The hardest I've ever hit someone, and I'm a pretty big guy with a football background, but he didn't see me coming. It felt very much like a do-or-die moment, so I didn't hold anything back. Broke a few of his bones, messed up his face, and got him sentenced to 6 years. Not me, but my aunt. She was at home alone in her backyard making food, and when she walked into the living room, she saw a couple of men in the middle of it carrying out the TV. It seems that they didn't think anyone was at home. They got surprised, dropped the TV, and ran out after she started screaming. Our previous neighbor had a habit of just walking into our house, unlocked back door. It was the early 80s. One day, my dad was taking a shower, and he stepped out of the bathroom in a towel to find our neighbor standing there. Soon after, a fence with a lock was installed in our backyard. We were told it was for our safety as kids, but my dad told me the truth when I was adult. So effing creepy, though. I was in bed asleep at 7 a.m. when I heard a loud bang. I thought nothing of it because of the large cat tree I have downstairs that's always getting knocked over. So I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. Not long after, my elderly cat came running into my bedroom, jumped up on the bed, and tries to hide under the blankets. This immediately woke me up because the old fat cat hadn't run nor jumped on our bed for years. As I came to, I see 2 men coming up my stairs. At that point, it felt like time stopped and, somehow, ran across fast at the same time. I jumped out of bed and started screaming, "Get the F out of my house!" And I remember thinking while chasing these guys through my house and screaming again and again at the top of my lungs that my voice sounds exactly like my brother. and I wondered how strange that was. I tackled one of them on my front lawn, but he struggled free and got away. I saw the getaway car and tried to keep repeating the license number, but it faded away in my mind as I was repeating it. I remember vividly being so mad at myself that I couldn't remember 7 numbers and how stupid I was for not grabbing my phone. Looking back on the situation, there are so many things that happened that I never noticed, like how I fractured my arm slamming into the wall at the bottom of the stairs, and that I cut my feet up on the splintered wood of my front door. The adrenaline rush of a true fight-or-flight situation is something so strange it's almost impossible to accurately describe. The sense of time, not being aware of pain and injuries for hours, and the hyper-focus on some details but the complete loss of others. Luckily, I wasn't seriously hurt and nothing was stolen, but I installed cameras all over my house the very next day. About 10 years ago, some guy broke down my mom's front door at 2 a.m. The noise of it woke her up, and she came out of her bedroom and saw the guy messing with the papers on her desk, thinking there was money there maybe. My mom's little dog was barking for all he was worth, and my mom was yelling my name. The yelling and barking woke me up upstairs in the guest bedroom, so I came running down the stairs making a lot of noise. The guy ran off because of my mom, the barking dog, me coming down the stairs, who knows. I ran out onto the street after him, but he was gone. Called the cops. They showed up in less than 5 minutes. The officer was very nice. The next day my mom got a new door with a longer deadbolt. It's a very quiet neighborhood. Haven't heard of such a thing happening to anybody else. Not sure if the guy was just crazy, at the wrong house, thought nobody was home, or something else. Little dog did a good job, and quick response time. I'm glad it all worked out for Mom. Was in 7th grade, home alone after a half day, when suddenly there was a very hard knocking on my back door. I knew immediately something was off because we never have visitors, and my father did not knock like that, and froze up in my room. I peek out of my room right in front of the back door, and suddenly it's quiet, so I go back to my room. As soon as I close my door, I hear glass shatter. Turned off my computer and TV and dove under my bed. For the next 40 minutes, I hear him thrashing around my living room and parents' room, then hear them leave. During this, I'm on a call with the cops, who think I'm prank calling them, and take 70 minutes to finally come over. The station is 3 streets away from my house. They come and investigate, only to find out it was our next-door neighbor that broke in and was actually looking for drug money. As it turns out, the previous person to live here did at-home haircuts and sold weed on the side. The neighbor was arrested, and his family moved out a week later. The only thing this guy took was my lunch money I left on a counter outside for the next day. When I was 11, my closest friend had a home invasion involving a local gang. Her father fought back. They stabbed him 14 times and shot him twice. Then, they held the wife and 2 of the children hostage. The 3rd little girl slept through it all. Tied them up and stole all the electronics and their car. After the robbers left, they went looking for Dad, and the youngest found him dead in the swimming pool. The entire suburb was devastated. He was the loveliest guy, had a black belt in karate, and did his best to fend off at least 4 intruders. After his death, they sold the house and moved across the country. Can't blame him. My boyfriend Jay and I were staying with 2 friends of his, Jim and Jeremy. Jeremy had left the apartment an hour or so before Jay, and I decided to go to bed. A few minutes after Jay fell asleep, I heard a knock on the door and Jim answered it. Turned out it was Jeremy, but he wasn't alone. 2 guys that also lived in the apartment building forced Jeremy to knock at the door so that they could force their way in, as he didn't have his keys with him. Once they were inside, I could hear what sounded like a scuffle from where I was in the bedroom with the door closed. I woke Jay up, and all of a sudden we hear 2 unknown voices yelling, "Get down! Get the F on the ground!" Jay wanted to go see what was going on, but I begged him to stay in the bedroom with me, which he did. After what seemed like a couple of minutes of arguing and fighting sounds, everything went absolutely silent. We opened the bedroom door to see Jim laying on the ground with what was later found out to be a barbed machete sticking out of his chest. Jeremy was calling 911. The apartment building didn't have a buzzer to let anyone into the building, so when the police got there, Jay let them in and showed them to the suite we were in. After that, they separated us all and put 3 of us into the back of 3 different police cars, where they left us while the paramedics tried to save Jim. Unfortunately, they weren't able to save him. He died at the apartment. I knew he was dead when the paramedics wheeled him out to the ambulance, but didn't leave for at least 5 minutes without working on him at all. The police took us to be questioned, again keeping us separated the entire time. About 12 hours later, they were ready to let us go, but told us we were not allowed to go back to the apartment as it was an active crime scene. We were dropped off by the police at a coffee shop with no money, phones, wallets, or even shoes on our feet, as they wouldn't let us take anything from the apartment before they put us in the police cars before being questioned. We ended up going to a friend's house where we stayed until we were let back into the apartment 4 or 5 days later. Once we were finally allowed back into the apartment, the first thing I had to do was clean up the blood, which I'm sure you can imagine was pretty hard to handle. It was pretty traumatic. My cousin's grandparents' house got broken into. I was still very young, and my parents and I just left their house 30 minutes ago when we got the phone call that there was a robbery. There were 5 to 8 intruders who came armed and beat both of them very badly, and then, being elderly, didn't help either. Anyways, they were admitted to a hospital but sadly passed away a few weeks later. Just makes me wonder. I probably would have been dead too if we had stayed there a bit longer. They were so nice too, so it makes me sad that it happened to them. Block the doors when it became clear that someone was trying to break in. My husband and I were staying with a friend, and her husband, her stepson, and elderly mother-in-law were also at the house. Someone had heard the old lady had jewelry and decided to try their luck. We heard this later through the town's grapevine. Said person then escalated to trying to kick his way in through the windows. They were leaded. My husband called the police while my friend tried to keep the Ope and children calm, and her husband and I screamed a lot and sort of flailed at the protruding feet with pokers from the old fireplace. Oh, realizing there were more of us than there were of him, he ran off. Good thing, too. The police never showed. They called 5 days later to see if we still needed their assistance. Bloody useless. In comparison, 6 months later I arrived at work to discover the door and cash drawer had been jimmied and the 50-pound float nicked, and they were over and taking fingerprints inside the hour. I wonder why trust in the police is so low. Total mystery. My wife was. She came home from her morning shift to find 2 guys standing in our apartment wrapping up their heist. She freaked out, they freaked out, then they ran and she ran after for a while and then called the cops. That was that. My door was kicked in just after 2 a.m. I walked out into the living room holding my gun. I said, "I'm armed," loudly, and at that point I heard someone chamber a round into a pistol, and I started shooting. I hit him twice, and he died. I have no regrets. Police told me he had just gotten out of prison a few days before for a similar crime. My aunt and cousin had a legit home invasion happen many years ago. Gang members came to the door and barged in, pistol whipped my cousin, tore the house up. The intruders didn't speak English and apparently had the wrong house. After realizing it was the wrong house, they left. This was in Tucson, Arizona, probably 20 years ago. My dog scared off what I believed to be robbers or home invaders. I was at home cooking dinner one night, and I was about 8 months pregnant at the time. My husband had to work about 2 hours away from our home on this particular day. Anyways, as I was standing in our kitchen cooking, our dog, Blue Heeler, suddenly got alarmed out of nowhere, and his hair raised on his back, and he was growling and barking. Well, next thing I know, someone knocked at our door. So I go to answer the door, and our dog stepped in front of me. As soon as I opened the door, our dog almost ran out in pure anger, but I held him back by his collar. There was a man standing on our porch. I asked, "Can I help you?" The man then said, "We're here to pick up the washer and dryer." After he said that, I looked in the driveway, and there was a tiny car no bigger than a Honda Civic out there. I immediately said, "There's no washer or dryer here for anyone to pick up." The man then said aggressively, "I told you we're here to pick up the washer and dryer." Mind you, this whole time I'm having to hold back our dog by his collar. He knew something wasn't right, and so did I. I then said, "Sir, there is nothing here for you, so please leave." You could tell the man was getting more and more scared of our dog because he kept backing up. He then just turned around and walked to his car, and I could tell there were multiple people in the car as well. I let go of my dog's collar, and he stood on the porch, growling, with his hair raised the entire time. The guy was walking to his car. Then, when the guy got to his car, they all sat there for like 10 minutes, and my dog never moved off the porch. He stayed there growling the whole time. By this time, I grabbed our shotgun we keep by our door. They then drove off, and my dog came back inside with me and wouldn't leave my side. I called my husband in a panic because what if they try and come back? My husband said he was about 15 minutes away from the house and that he was hurrying as fast as he could. Our dog truly saved mine and the baby's life. He was so protective, and I know if I would have let him go, he would have attacked this man without question. It was truly a scary experience. I wish our dog was still alive today, but he sadly passed away a year ago. He absolutely adored our son.